Greetings, Sir and Sirettes, and welcome back to From the Depths with me, Lathrix, and of course, welcome back to the Vulture. In today's episode, we are going to be hopefully finding a little bit more combat than the previous episode, and upgrade our vessel even further. I think at this stage, it's almost ready to have a brand new hull. We are at the stage where size is starting to become an issue. I really would like an advanced cannon, even if it's just a belt-fed, very small AA cannon. But for that, I really do need more ammunition, I need some more space for some other stuff, and we don't really have that much. This thing is actually deceptively small. It looks like quite a large flyer. Then you realise how thin the thing is. It is very, very small, just oversized in terms of its width. So, let's continue. And let's see if we can find some combat today. Well, neither are what we're after. Oh, never mind, I was about to say neither are what we're after because I don't really care about the difficulty increase or decrease, but over there is a resource zone which is utterly fantastic. A little bit of free resource in which I don't have to fight for, even though I really do want to start some fighting. The upside to the resource zone is it normally spawns enemies if you stay there for too long, so we're getting the best of both worlds. We get to fight something, and hopefully we get some more resource. The next upgrade I'm going to be going with is upgrading this vessel to have RTGs and to have batteries, but not for engine power. I really want, where are you? I really want a particle cannon. This way we can have an anti-air weapon, which is pretty easy to set up, a little bit of long-range EMP. Or explosive. Or impact. Or piercing. So, I've already changed my mind. I don't think anyone is surprised at this stage. I've used some RTGs already, and they are now providing us some extra engine power. The RTGs can be found in the very core of the craft, just past our main engines. This way, we have some more thrusters, which means we're now going, hopefully, a little bit faster. We're now going at 38 meters per second, which is significantly better, and now I can't see where the sodding resource zones are. Why is it always so misty? Ooh! There are resource zones, there's 2 of them. You can just about see them in the mist. Well, that's pretty awesome, although still no enemies. First resource zone is now being harvested, absolutely fantastic. Now, one thing I just thought of is with the new resource system, love it or hate it, the RTGs are going to be even better now because fuel is now just classed as resource, so you're wasting resource you could use for repairs, for upgrading your vessel, and for all other sorts of things, like even ammunition, on fuel, whereas the RTG costs a lot of resource, but if you can keep it relatively safe, over time that's going to save you resource, not just save you on oil, because of course oil could only really be used for a few buildings, and mostly is just used for fuel. That's just a bit of food for thought. Judging by the previous clip, it was somewhere southeastern from my last location, so I should go... there's east. They're south, I should go somewhere this way. At least, that's what I think. If not, honestly, I'm bored just sitting there. Second resource zone was just harvested, and now it's time to add our little particle cannon. Now this is an exact copy of the one I'm currently using on our drone. It has only 3 lasers of a possible 5, well they're not technically lasers, but you get the idea. And it's okay. It's tiny, it's very discreet, and it works at medium ranges. I mean honestly, with the demonstration in the last Onyx Watch video, it kind of shows that it can work fairly effectively despite all of the drawbacks of it. So, what we need to add next, of course, is the local weapon controller, which will cost us 30, which we can't currently afford. So what am I going to destroy to make room for this? I'll be back in a second once I've decided. Local weapon controller in here, and then we add the mainframe here, and then, because I don't trust this thing whatsoever, I would very much like a failsafe. And set to absolute maximum. There we are then, we have a particle cannon currently active on the Vulture. It's not going to be the best weapon of all time, but it should give us a bit of an advantage against somewhat fast ground units. Well, naval units, waterborne units, ships. After being so bored that I've set up the flares to now fire in a random pattern, we are finally coming up against an enemy somewhere in the distance. There is something that wants to do us harm, and by the looks of it, it's a very simple Drake Light, which means it's going to die really quickly to our lovely particle cannon. At least, that's the idea, as long as it stays underneath us. Or perhaps we could just shoot missiles. One of the two. Oh, it just fired at us. Will it hit us? We've just released flares. Its missiles going completely off us. We hit it with the particle cannon, and the first enemy we've seen in a very long time goes down incredibly quickly. Well done, particle cannon. Well done, missiles. That was remarkably easy, and we got 600-ish resource from that. So, all is well. And we continue. What on earth has just happened? We have entered the Blood God's domain. On the upside, we found a red portal, which I'm definitely going to go through in a moment, and there is also a resource zone, because we're going to harvest the Blood Red Sea. This is getting very dark, very creepy, very fast. Or perhaps the Dark Gods have took favour upon us, and we are going to only have the bestest of times from now on. One of the two. And so we harvest the Blood Red Ocean. So now that we're here, what do I want to do with the resource I get? I think I want to swap over a little bit more to battery power, purely because constantly replacing these fuel storage tanks is starting to cost me a fortune. Of course, I could be a little bit more economical and go ahead and make a, where are you, the beautiful fuel refinery, but this thing is liable to detonate if it gets hit or if we start tipping over. I am not running that risk of putting this thing on such a small craft, so our resource is going towards RTGs and more batteries. Either the water was tied to the light effects of the sky, or we've just absorbed all of the blood from the ocean. Both of these seem really, really odd. I am nowhere near high enough to get into that warp gate. I swear I've heard a friend say that once before. Anyway, we're now underneath the warp gate, so... Stop. Let's see if we can get up there. So I have no idea how high that is. That is definitely too high. 400, sure, that seems reasonable to me. And 400 for you as well. I'm coming, my beautiful warp gate. Seriously, it's actually above 400. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get that high without hitting the air ceiling. Come on, you can do it just a little bit higher. Nope, that is the maximum height this aircraft can get to. That is ridiculously mean, and there's one over there about the same height. Well, screw you, game. Let's go to the other one and see if we can get in that. I've got a bit of a theory. So whilst I'm harvesting from this resource zone, which is thankfully between the two warp gates, I'm going to go and land in the water. I've turned off the motor drive, which means no engine power is currently going towards our main rotor blade, so we should slowly descend into the water, and then we will see if enemies attack us, because both times we were swarmed by enemies, it was because we were in the water. Maybe being in the air makes us harder to detect, I don't really know, so let's see if this works. Sadly though, I can't harvest when I'm this low. Slight problem. What about if we put this, where are you? If we put this here. Can that harvest? Okay, we can harvest through our own craft, that's fine. Well, the enemies didn't approach us whilst we were harvesting, but there is an enemy over there just past that green ring. So we're going to go past the easy ring and then go towards this one to up our difficulty, because at this stage I really feel like until we up our difficulty, we're just going to be wandering around aimlessly. Upon closer inspection, I think that very well may be a Marauder, which means the EMP weapon is going to be pretty much useless since it is a majority wood ship. And honestly, staying at a decent range would probably be the best idea, since the only other weapon it has, other than the cram cannon, which is pretty easy to dodge, is a series of very small, simple weapons, which are very, very short range. So if we just stay somewhere like this and just bombard it with torpedoes, it should be a very easy victory. Especially if we can stay away from the cram cannon. There we go. One massive internal explosion there. The EMP doing very, very little, but looking very, very cool, and then even more torpedoes being released. The EMP may not be doing much, but it's definitely looking nice, and that's the important part here. Seems like it stopped. I think we've stopped it from being able to move, or at least turn. It can still move forward because of those huge paddles, but it can no longer turn, so now it's just hitting a giant wooden slab until it eventually dies. The Marauder is actually made out of quite a bit of resource as well, so this is like a mini resource zone for us, so I am still pretty happy. And I am tempted to replace the torpedoes with 2 more particle cannons, and then having those on impact or piercing, thus being able to do a bit more sustained damage. As much as I love the torpedoes, we can easily add them to the back of the craft or something. Since I'm now a little bit bored, let's be silly, go over the target, which means these simple weapons can very likely hit us, and, I think about here, release the mines! Let's see how they do. There they are, all in the water. Sadly, my camera is very, very rocky, since I can't unbind myself to my character anymore, at least not in this mode. And there we go, explosive mines everywhere. Doing a surprisingly high amount of internal damage there. Okay. The Marauder is just so tanking hits here. Ooh, a second enemy. Excellent. Finally, the Marauder is now AI dead. The mines detonated the section the AI was being kept safe, and thus we get all of that lovely resource. Let's go towards that second enemy before we teleport to the more difficult area. More resource is definitely good. Hello, new target. I think that's the Deepwater Guard as well. So if we're lucky, those missiles should put it out of its misery fairly fast. That is, of course, if we're lucky. Also, that turret with the ejector add-ons is so much better than that last turret. The harpoons are almost hitting the target straight away. Yep, that is definitely a member of the Deepwater Guard. And unlike the Marauder, it's not as tanky, so that should not last very long at all. By the looks of it, it may be dead in the next volley, if we're lucky. EMP versus wooden targets. Kind of pointless. Whoa, there it goes! We must have hit the ammunition storage. I am surprised by how little damage our missiles are doing. Like I said before, they are triple warhead, which is quite powerful. It's almost akin to the missiles that the Firework uses. Although the Firework does use 4 and 5 warheads, you would think 3 warheads would do a pretty similar job. Of course, now I can't see a darn thing. Let's go towards the red circle regardless. And so we descend, very laggily, into the next warp gate. Please don't break the game like you did last time. There we are. Ooh, wow. Okay, it's raining here. Motor drive back to 10. Let's get back into the air as soon as possible and quickly survey our surroundings. Absolutely nothing, although now we are going to be approached by some more difficult opponents. Do I want to change this into particle cannons? I do love the torpedoes, but I think we can easily replace the mines for them, because although the mines are very fun, they're not particularly practical. And that will go here. We will eventually make a casing for these things, but for now, that will do. So, what do I want these two as? I think what we'll do is we'll have the 2 side ones on piercing. We'll keep the middle one as it was on EMP, and we'll have this one as well on piercing. There we are. So this way, we have some more consistent damage against pretty much any type of enemy. I can't see anything to head towards, so I guess let's just move towards the east so that if we do get one of those, if we end up going through a warp gate, we'll go through a warp gate which will take us to somewhere with less stormy weather. Although the weather has instantly cleared up, which is kind of bizarre, honestly. It seems very sporadic in this game mode. I like blue. Blue is the new paint scheme. Let's carry on. Oh, hello, there is an enemy flyer currently heading towards us. Okay then, let's set up this very, very quickly and move to engage it. I have no idea what that flyer is. Either way, I've googled it, and it turns out that enemies will spawn as long as you stay in a reasonable area. So us constantly hunting for them is very likely causing them to spawn less, since we're constantly on the run. A lot of EMP hits there, but it doesn't seem to be doing all that much. Will our missiles land? Yes, they will! Wow! That was a lot of damage done there, and the missile heading towards us being distracted by the flares, that was a very quick victory, and by the looks of it, that was a Scarlet Dawn flyer. So apparently we are now fighting against much harder opponents. Either way, that was a very small, harder opponent, so let's stay in this area, let's continue to harvest, and let's see if any other enemies will spawn to greet us. Okay, so I've been doing some more reading on the official wiki, and how the enemies spawn is actually sort of bizarre, and yet completely understandable. The longer you stay in one plane of existence, the more regularly the enemies will spawn, because it checks for if you've been staying in the same area every X amount of time. This X amount of time is more frequent the longer you've stayed in a particular plane, which means every time we go to a new area, it's essentially resetting. On top of this, as you travel every 500 meters or so, there will be a chance of spawning a new enemy. So if we stay in the same area, it will become more and more frequent if I'm staying in the same place, but at the same time, if I travel, it's also going to be more frequent, and the longer I stay in the same plane, it means enemies will be a lot more consistent. So we're going to stay here. And if you're wondering about why our lovely little harvesters here are going a little bit mental, it's because there's only currently one material spawning at a time at this zone, and we're slowly draining it. So most likely I'm going to move over to the next resource zone so that we can harvest a bit more consistently. At a whopping 49 velocity. A new enemy has spawned in, and by the looks of the laser that's currently aiming at us, it's very likely got missiles which are controlled by a laser designator. So, let's wait until we've got a little bit more resource for repairs, and then let's go meet it in the field of battle. It turns out our enemy is actually a submarine, so I've very quickly changed our missiles into torpedoes, so hopefully these will get the job done. Come on. About to hit it as long as it has enough fuel, and there we go! Submarine is happily destroyed. There are, however, some more targets on the horizon, so I need to swap these back from their current torpedo state and back to regular missiles. As much as I would like to stay around the resource zones, I am really in the mood to fight, so the enemy, by the looks of it, are two flyers, one being significantly larger than the other. Though, to be honest, with the smaller flyers, I tend to find those a lot scarier, since they are far harder to hit and generally have some kind of thing going for them, which makes them difficult. I mean, just look at the flying squirrel. One of the simplest designs you can get, absolutely tiny, and it inspires fear among a lot of people. It's even classed as a godly design. I was half correct. One enemy is a flyer, the other enemy is a broadsiding Onyx Watch ship. So, if we stay at about medium range, we should be able to dodge the Onyx Watch fairly easily. But the flyer seems to be the biggest issue. Never mind, I just hit it with missiles. Everything is suddenly fine. Missiles solve everything, guys. No, don't go after the thing that's already dead. Go after the big ship. Look at how much resource that's worth. Flares being shot everywhere because of the enemy missiles from the flyer, even though it's still dead. No other enemies? Okay, it's just this one. So as long as we stay behind or in front of it, it shouldn't be able to broadside us or shoot any of its weapons. Massive explosions there. The Vulture is picking off the weakest of the enemy. Very, very fitting indeed. Now in a somewhat luminescent blue. Okay, if I'm directly above the target, it seems like the missile's having a bit of trouble hitting, so let's turn around very, very slowly. I do need to improve my turning. And then another volley of missiles, if you would be so kind. The EMP did a lot this battle. They actually took out a lot of their guns before they started firing at me. Wish it hit the flyer, though. That would have been an even faster victory. Lots of big explosions, lots of stuff being turned offline, and a lot of resource being given to us. Wow. Well, that was a very big explosion, and that marks the end to the enemy ship. I wish I could just jump off and capture it and harvest it that way, but like I say, if we're not near a Heartstone, we will be losing health. There we go, 7,000 resource we now have, and once again, the water is turning a very ominous red, and with that, I'm afraid I am all out of time for today's episode. Now that the enemies are spawning in at a more regular rate, we are going to stay on this plane for a while, see what types of enemies we can fight, and then go to our next mode, our next evolution of the helicopter. We really need more weapons, honestly. The particle cannons are fun, but unless I dedicate a bit more to them, they're not really going to be that fantastic. I think advanced cannons are needed, and some more missiles, or perhaps an extra torpedo section, replacing the little mines at the back, which honestly are fun, but not very effective. So with that, thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed the video, then of course, likes, favourites, shares, comments, all that good stuff helps out me, helps out the channel, and most importantly, shows that From the Depths is a series you wish to see continued in the future. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.